I'm Jess. I'm a Pilates instructor and a physiotherapist, and I work a lot with women's health issues as well as lots of musculoskeletal problems. So I wanted to just do a quick video on why the breathing and the core muscles are all so interlinked and so important for all sorts of conditions, from back pain to diastasis, which is where your abdominals can split, commonly in pregnancy, but also commonly if you're using the muscles incorrectly or you have a lot of abdominal fat that's pushing out. And also pelvic floor issues and dysfunctions and things like prolapse, or making you more prone to, say, a prolapse. So I want us to just have a little think about what the core is, and then that might help explain why the breathing is so important, and how if you can get it right, you can really help yourself not get some of these issues, and also help improve them if you're suffering from any of those problems. So the best way to think about it, a good analogy is like have a balloon or a ball, and think about that as kind of your abdominal cavity. So think about this sitting inside here. And you don't have to know the specific anatomy, but at the front, you've got some muscles that draw your tummy in towards your spine. So when you pull them in, when you pull your belly button in, it's called your TVA, or your transverse, and it acts like a corset. It wraps around and it draws in, okay? And then when you're kind of sucking in and pulling it away, we think about that muscle working. So that's on the front, okay? And then on the back is the muscles of the spine that work to stabilize the spine and also control the segmental movement of the spine. So when you've got back pain, they often don't work very well, and they often aren't very strong or mobile. So they're on the back, they're called multifidus, but that doesn't really matter, the names. And then we've got what I think of as the ceiling of your core inside here, and this is your diaphragm that sits here. Now the diaphragm is the breathing muscle, okay? And as you breathe in, it flattens down, and as you breathe out, it comes up. And what happens there, that's why the breathing is so related to the core. And then at the bottom, okay, the floor of your core is your pelvic floor, and that holds the internal organs up, and it also helps control continence, okay? And you have some control of that, and also some involuntary control of that. And that is a muscle like the diaphragm that will, as you breathe in, it will come down, and as you breathe out, it will come up. And they are linked all together. And if we can get the balance of those muscles right, we can create the perfect amount of tension in the core to support the spine really well, okay, and not cause too much pressure in one region. If there's a weakness, so let's think of an example. So you've got really good transverse abdominis, which is the muscle that flattens the spine, okay? And you've got equally good control at the back from the spine. And your diaphragm, you're taking a nice deep breath and you're feeling your diaphragm coming down. If you haven't got a strong pelvic floor, okay, what may be a traumatic birth, some damage to the pelvic floor after pregnancy, or a hysterectomy, or your pelvic floor has just got weak for some reason, then you can't equal the pressure with your pelvic floor. You can't lift up, or maybe you just don't know how to recruit the muscles properly. So you've got downward, inwards, and what's going to happen is, you're going to get this pressure at the bottom, a bearing down on the pelvic floor. So say you add some weight, you lift something, you carry something, say you carry your baby, you push down, or you do some sort of exercise that's quite high intensity, you can't lift the pelvic floor, you don't know how to, and then you may get leakage or just general downward pressure that could eventually lead to a prolapse. So that's one example, okay? Another example, if we think about a diastasis where the abdominals split at the front, then we've got a weakness between the abdominals, okay? And so what happens then is, if we get pressure inside the abdominal cavity, pelvic floor, okay, diaphragm, what happens then is we get this bulging at the front when we put pressure on it. And we might not be able to stop that in pregnancy. We may only be able to avoid things that bring that on, but afterwards, we can learn to get stronger through these deep muscles to help draw the rectus abdominis, or the six-pack muscle, together. okay? And that's another example of where if there's an imbalance in these core muscles, you're going to find you get a problem somewhere. And the other example, like I mentioned at the start, is lots of low back pain can come from a weak core. So if you haven't got the ability to stabilize and move the spine segmentally, all the external muscles are working really tight and they're holding you a bit like a plank, then it's often that weakness that will lead to a breakdown, which may come from, you know, a facet joint dysfunction, or it could be an SI joint problem, because you have to get movement somewhere, and the weakest point will often, you will get the pain. So if we can learn to breathe correctly down into the diaphragm, we can learn to engage the pelvic floor, draw the belly button in, and make sure that these deep muscles of the spine are working, we can get this lovely balanced core pressure, which will make us much less vulnerable to injury, to things like hernias, to prolapses. And if we can use that knowledge whilst we're doing exercises that are really functional, that stress these parts, like doing sit-ups, making sure we're pulling in, like lifting something heavy, making sure we're lifting the pelvic floor, okay? And doing anything that involves pressure through the core. If you've got any questions or you want to see some more of my stuff, I've got lots more videos on the YouTube channel and lots of posts on Instagram. I'm really happy to answer any questions and post some more information if you can't find what you're looking for. Okay, thanks a lot.